One of the purposes of this upcoming project is to explore the concept of texture. Here is an example of a cake with no texture. Notice how there's no difference between the icing part of the cake and the breading part of the cake. Everything is these straight, boring lines. While over here, same size cake, except everywhere that there is icing, the lines are fluid and wavy. Even the part where there's icing in between the breading, we've changed the lines from these straight lines to these more fluid and wavy lines. We're also depicting gravity pulling down the icing. There's even extra icing down here where gravity has pulled it down. It does not show gravity affecting the cake on this side, but it definitely shows gravity pulling down and affecting the cake on this left side. Take a look at the breading part of the cake. On this side, the breading is these jaggedy lines. Instead of wavy, loose lines, we are depicting edges that are jaggedy and somewhat sharp. On this example, with no texture, the lines are just completely straight. So the last part of us really showing the difference between the breading part and the icing is what we put on the inside of the shapes. On the insides of the breading parts, we have these little jaggedy backwards letter C's or jaggedy circles to show that this is a different texture than this icing up here. Instead of these jaggedy circles, we have loose, wavy lines to show that the icing was smeared across the top of the cake. There are two reasons why your cake should be way lighter than this. It should be a level 2 pressure. One reason is because we're going to go from having these very straight lines. We're going to end up erasing these very straight lines and turning them into more textured lines. Another reason why is because when you go to add objects, like in front of your cake, you would then need to erase out this old line behind the object to push it forward in space. Now my line through here was too heavy, and that's why there's this ghost line going through my cake. If I wanted to draw something on top of my cake, like right here, I would then need to erase out this particular line. And if that old line was too heavy, there's going to be a distracting ghost line going through it. Step 1, make sure that your paper is going long ways. And to make sure that your paper is not upside down, what you need to do is take a look at the dots on your paper. I know that the dots are very light on your paper because that's how light all of your drawing is supposed to be for this whole drawing portion of the project. But you have 1, 2, 3, 4, and then a 5th one up here. Make sure that your paper is going in the way where there's 1, 2, 3, 4 close to you, and then a 5th one more in the center of the page pointing up and away. We're going to connect this dot to this one. You can do it in light, small, sketchy lines if you want, or you can do it in one long line, but you have to do it in level 2 light pressure. I'm going to do mine heavy pressure so that it will show up on the camera. It's okay if it's not perfectly straight. In fact, I don't want it to be perfectly straight or done with a ruler. It'll have more realism because cakes are not perfectly straight in all their different angles. Now, whenever you look at this left side, there's another 2 dots on top of each other. hold your paper down with one hand and either do light little lines or one long light line. Do not draw your lines as heavy as I'm drawing right now. Now we need to turn the paper up and down. Turn your paper up and down to where it looks like this. I'm going to zoom back in and we're going to connect this dot here to this one here. And you might need to draw a little bit this way and then draw a little bit that way. You could do small little sketchy lines. Whatever way you decide to do it, it needs to be level 2 light pressure. It should not be as dark as mine whatsoever. Same thing on the other side. Going to connect this dot to this one. You need to do this lightly in level 2 light pressure. Now turn your paper going back long ways. Time to focus on this top right corner. You're going to draw a light, small diagonal line out and away from it. It's like it has a little arm going out and away. From this small diagonal line, lightly draw a line straight down, but not all the way down. In fact, I can erase a little bit off of right here. Now, to show a little bit of gravity pulling down the icing on the back part of the cake, I'll zoom in for this. I'm going to bump out, over, and back in to the cake. When I zoom out, it looks like this. I just bumped out, over, and back in. There's this little dot left over hanging out by itself. It's time to interact with it. This little dot needs to connect with this corner right here. So it doesn't need to be a completely perfect line. In fact, it should bow outward a little bit. I would prefer for the line, don't draw this arrow, to bow outward a bit. So here's what I mean by that. You're going to kind of go outward a little bit. Instead of it being totally straight, we went a bit more outward. On this side, let's round this edge a bit, kind of round that dot out. And I want you to kind of bow outward this way with this diagonal line. And if you need to do short little sketchy lines to achieve this, then do so. Make sure any lines that you make are light level 2 pressure. There's an area where icing is in between the breading. We need to go ahead and create this little separated area. So in order to do that, I recommend turning the paper back up and down to be able to pull towards yourself. So turning my page back up and down. Do this slightly because you might not be able to get it center. You want to follow the same angle as this, the same angle. And I'm going to go ahead and make this line kind of wavy so that I don't have to redo it again. We're going to go ahead and create a texture line with this. So notice how these lines are slightly wavy. See how it's the same amount of space skipped for this whole section? There's no area where it gets closer together. You want the same amount of space skipped throughout that piece. Now, the next line is even easier because you just kind of follow along with the previous one that you did. Skip some space over, make sure that this line is wavy. Do it lightly. I'm only doing it heavy so that it shows up on camera. When I turn my paper back long ways, my cake looks like this. There's some things that we need to erase that are distracting. Let's go ahead and erase this line out and make it more textured, okay? And also notice how it feeds into, it connects into that icing in the center. So this is going to be hard for me to erase out because I drew too heavy. Erase that entire old line out. We don't have this line anymore. I'm going to go into the cake and just make a line that has slight little waves and unevenness to it. Then skip a space and go down some more with a line that has a slight little wave to it. Now we want to clean this area up. I want to make it look like the icing is being fed into this spot. When I zoom in, you can see how the icing is being fed into that middle area. If you like the way that it is on the right side right now, that's fine. But if you want to add some icing dripping down, in order to do that effect, we are going to curve out in a way kind of like the dripping water droplet that we did. But notice we have this distracting line going through our water droplet. We want to get rid of where that old cake wall used to be. Mine's pretty difficult to get rid of because I drew so heavy. You can also do like a letter U, just going out and away. Let's clean up this spot right here. I'll zoom in. We want to make it look like the icing is different than the breading. So I'm going to erase and clean up the icing where the top of the breading curves here, the bottom of the breading curves there. and a little bit of icing is kind of spilling out. When I zoom out, it looks like this. It's time to start creating the icing that is dripping down the side of the cake. If you want to turn the paper back up and down to do this step, you can. I'm going to curve in over here. All of our icing is going to go below this line, okay? We're going to end up erasing that whole line out. It's just as a reference to show how far down we're going to go from it. So step one, I'm not even going to do dramatic dripping parts yet. I'm just going to make sure that the icing is wavy and that it's going below that original line. Now go ahead and erase out this original line. The kind of complicated part that's right here needs to be erased out. All of this and our diagonal line. This whole entire thing needs to be erased out. Erase gently. It should be very easy for you to erase this because you were supposed to be drawing in a light level 2 pressure. We need to add an even more dramatic drip, and you can put this drip anywhere that you would like. Choose a spot to put in a wide letter U. You can see where I tried it earlier and I didn't like the placing. And then we're going to connect the letter U into our cake shape and connect it into our cake shape over here. Now we don't need this old line anymore. I'm going to go ahead and erase out that old line. There's another spot that I want to exaggerate over here. I'll put a very wide, long letter U. And then I'll kind of curvy line it up into the cake. Now we don't need that old line anymore. We can erase that out. We need to create a little bit more of a wavy texture line here and a little bit more of a wavy texture line here. So I'll zoom in to this top right corner and I'll erase out my old line. Just enough where you can still see it a little bit so you can use it as a reference. And so that you guys can see, I'll start from this side and go there. And I'm just making it a tad bit more wavy, not a crazy amount wavy. I'll go over it again just to show you, but you don't need to go that dark. Same as over here, this is too straight of a curve. It's not giving the viewer enough information about the texture of our icing. So you need to erase this line out here gently. And when you lay that line back in, have the slightest little bit of a curve, and if you want to make icing go down even more, you can. Now that you understand the kind of shape that we're dealing with. Our breading of our cake is not made up of these loose wavy lines. It's made up of these small jaggedy lines. So we need to depict that to show that there's a difference between the texture of the breading and the texture of the icing. So I'm going to erase out this old line here. And this old line here. And then I'm going to, and do this lightly, draw up, but have like these little sharp grooves about the way that I'm going up. And I'm going to do it again to show that the cake is three-dimensional. Right next to it, either on the right side or the left side, I'll let you decide which one looks better. I'll go on the left side. I'm going to follow it up with the same shape really close to it. The bottom also needs lines like this, but not as dramatic as this. Let's erase out this bottom line. I've really done a job on my eraser here. Let me try my other eraser. Let's erase out. And I drew it very heavy, so you can still see where the line was. If you need to turn the paper up and down to better pull the line towards you, then do so. But I'm just laying the exact same line back in, but I'm gonna have it more inconsistent on purpose. A little bit of jaggedy spots. Nice and light. We're gonna add in some texture to show the breading. I'm gonna create these little jaggedy kind of backwards letter C's. I'll do about 5 up here and 5 down here. Small, jaggedy, backwards letter C's. You need to do this lightly. Mine are so heavy that they look distracting. Let's see, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up here, and I need 5 jaggedy backwards letter C's down here. Now I'm gonna do jaggedy circles. Really small, do 5 jaggedy circles up here, 5 kind of jaggedy circles down here. Sometimes have, your texture lines disappear behind the icing. 1 jaggedy circle, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And next I'm going to do ovals. I'll do about, let's do like 3 ovals up here and 3 ovals down here. They're tiny little ovals. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Now I'll just do some dots. Let's do 3 dots up here, 3 dots down here. I'll choose a spot. 1 dot, 2 dot, 3 dot up here, 1 dot, 2 dot, 3 dot down there. Your texture needs to be a lot lighter than mine. Mine's so heavy that it's distracting. But notice how I didn't overdo it. Okay, everything's nice and spaced out. The other main purpose of this project is to practice something called composition. Composition is how things are laid out. To create a strong composition, there is a formula that you can follow called foreground, middle ground, and background. Now, you don't have to put things exactly in the same spot as me, but look for some type of object or way to show that something is in front of the cake. This is a foreground object. Then look for something that's on top of the cake, or morph the back of the cake into something. That's called your mid ground, like it's in the middle, mid ground. And then you can create some type of logo or shape or design that becomes your background. The background, and I'll make things darker so that you can see, it went behind the cake. We have something in front. I'll zoom out a little bit. In front, in the middle, and behind the cake. You also can have things, you know, climbing up the back of the cake. Like if I have like a little cat that is climbing up the back of the cake. You can have something going on back here behind the cake. It doesn't even have to be like something that could possibly happen in real life. You can have a piece of lightning being struck onto the cake. There's all kinds of cool things to do to manipulate the cake.